Have come together under the umbrella of H2O. We've asked what could we do together that we could not do separately as we address environmental aspects of our own missions as foundations. And we've asked, could we, by working together, symbolize the partnership between New Jersey and New York, people and organizations, that seems essential if we are to discover successful strategies for the long-term protection and health of our region. We asked, what if, most of all, we saw ourselves as living in an ecological region, the region we call H2O, Highlands to Ocean.
We're here because we're worried that without some vision or planning, a once-in-a-century opportunity may pass us by. No generation has had the opportunity that we have. We're here because too many miles of valuable land lie fallow with toxic waste. And because for so many communities, a waterfront park is still a hole in somebody else's chain link fence. We're here this morning because we know we are separated by history, by culture, and by politics, and we know that we must break through these divisions to get anywhere. You can't clean up half a harbor.
What our concern today is the New York Harbor area, which is part of a larger picture, which is the politically correct way of describing our estuary as the New York-New Jersey Harbor Estuary. Some of the contaminants that we worry about today, particularly in connection with our ability to dredge the harbor and dispose of material in an acceptable way, we're worried about some exotic organic contaminants like PCBs, dioxins, PAHs, DDTs. And what you see here is that all concentrations for PCBs, DDT, and dioxins throughout the harbor are fairly high in comparison to other regions of the country. In fact, some of the concentrations exceed some existing threshold values that people worry about. And you also see that for PCBs, we have a harbor-wide problem in the sediments. For other contaminants, such as dioxin, we see we've got more problems in Newark Bay. And things like DDT, which has been banned for many years, it's still coming into the harbor, believe it or not, and there are problems in the Arctic Hill area.
I'm not going to give you a definition of restoration. The Society for Ecological Restoration has the best. I don't believe, however, that we can separate preservation from restoration. A group of us are beginning to make that case to federal and regional decision makers. We are asking that federal and state funds be allocated for specific high-priority acquisitions as a first step in an overall harbor restoration plan. I urge all of you to join with us. If we preserve green fields and remediate brownfields, we will restore communities, both wildlife and human.
The bay, the rivers, the streams, and the marshes of the Hudson River Estuary don't belong to the Port Authority. They don't belong to the Army Corps of Engineers or to the Environmental Protection Agency. They don't belong to the Hackensack Meadowlands Development Commission. They don't belong to the state of New Jersey or New York. They do not belong to any private developer, any industry located on its banks, and they don't belong to any county or municipality or to the lords of power. These lands are our commons. They belong to us all. However, if we do not exercise our proprietorship over them, others will. So how do we take back the bay from those who would restrict our access? How do we develop a port in which the estuary is as important a component as port infrastructure? I believe the only way we can take back the bay is to truly integrate the environment, sustainable development, and social equity.
People have been going to the water to fish and boat and swim since ancient times. We've always been drawn to the water. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that the legal means of protecting our right to access the water and engage in these activities comes from ancient times as well. The source of the protection of that right is something called the public trust doctrine. In its simplest form, this doctrine says that the right to use and enjoy the waterfront belongs to everyone and it belongs to no one. What that means is everyone has the right to be at the waterfront and to use it for traditional and modern purposes, from fishing and swimming and navigation to modern recreational uses, whatever those might be, and no one can exclusively own the waterfront. And to guard against this privatization, the state of New Jersey in particular has taken legal measures to protect the public's rights and to exercise its obligation as the trustee of those rights. And it enacted a regulation which requires any developer who develops along the waterfront contribute to the construction of a public access walkway along the Hudson River that's to be 30 feet wide, and there are a lot of specifications for it. But the idea is that this will protect the public's right of access from the privatization pressures that result from development. But perhaps the most overt opposition to the walkway and its effort to protect the public's rights was a recent lawsuit brought by an organization representing developers called the National Association of Home Builders, which claimed that the walkway represented an unconstitutional taking of private property for public use. I am happy to report that the District Court for the District of New Jersey rejected that attempt to do away with public access and held that you can't take from the private property owners what they don't own, and they don't own the right to public access.
As you look around, you kind of wonder, what are we going to be repairing? There's probably 100,000 piles on Hudson River Park on the west side of Manhattan that will need to be replaced over the next 10 years. On a quick survey, there's 40 to 50 projects you can identify. The cost to repair there is in the billions of dollars, or over $1 billion. And that's not a long-ranging plan. One of the good news events that's happening is American Society of Testing Materials. They're in the process of finalizing some specifications for decking boards and testing of recycled plastic. Those specs will be available within a year or so, and we'll start to see a common usage.
Piers, thousands of feet long, could be opened up for recreation and for enjoyment, spectacular views. Waterfront warehouses now open can be used for recreational activities, for educational facilities, and for marine research. Esplanades and bikeways can create opportunities to traverse these miles of waterfront.
So what's the big deal about contamination? You find where the contamination is, you clean it up. It's just a matter of money, right? Wrong. There are no clear standards in New York to quantify the cost of how to clean this stuff up. How do you get a developer or investor to do that? If the groundwater is contaminated, you've got to clean it up to drinking water standards. There's not enough money on the face of the planet to do that. There's liability that from federal and state laws that extend to you, even if you haven't had anything to do with contributing to the contamination. And then to top it all off, there's current economic development programs that essentially look at how many jobs per dollar do you get. You add the dollars that it's going to cost to to clean up the property, and your ratio goes out the window, so we end up subsidizing green fields at the expense of brown fields, encouraging more urban sprawl.
There's a lot more to be done, even though there is comprehensive legislation in New Jersey for incentives, financial incentives, and liability incentives for redevelopment of old landfills and contaminated land. There's a lot more to be done. I think everyone should try to get a copy of the new dredge material management plan that the Corps of Engineers put out 2 weeks ago, because that lists the entire range of alternatives for beneficial use of the dredge material, up to 4 million cubic yards per year, that needs to be disposed of in our New York, New Jersey harbor.
More than 100 ferry routes have come and gone on the Hudson River during the past 300 years. Ferry service peaked in the early part of the century, but if you watch the waters closely, you'll see the Hudson River ferry service slowly coming back.
Ferries bring people. People bring activity and money and economic development. The more ferry traffic there is, the more potential there is for redeveloping the waterfront to its highest and best uses. Most, if not all, of the major mixed-use development sites on the Hudson County waterfront, from Port Imperial in the north to Port Liberté in the south, now have, or soon will have, ferry service. And the development community has come to realize that ferries are not only a nice amenity, but really an essential piece of infrastructure for their projects.
We need to minimize conflict on the water and among land uses along the waterfront while encouraging, underlined, mixed uses, especially open space and recreation. And finally, we need to utilize our harbor investment plans and opportunities to engage in environmental restoration, habitat creation, and the fostering of an improved stewardship of the existing natural resources in this eons-old harbor. And the time is now. The current port has 75 berths, 6.5 million square feet of warehouse, 48 container cranes, and 780 acres dedicated to break bulk. There are 5 vehicle processors, state-of-the-art rail, double-stack access, 14 intermodal rail terminals. But all these impressive facilities will be inadequate for this port of the future.
What do we need? Cleaning up our sediments, habitat restoration and protection, including the Arlington Marsh, an improved freight rail system, access and parts. How is the port on the one hand could be viewed as a competitor for that space, and on the other hand, we can also look at it for a source of funding for all these things that we want to do.
One of the things that we were trying to do is to take advantage of the huge population base of children that are here in the 5 boroughs and in the regional area, and bring them to the waterways and to our preserves. And to try and use the natural resource around us. We ignore it so often. But where else can you find striped bass right here? Where else can you find plankton? Where else can you watch the wave series go in and out? Where else can you look at Prawls Island? Where else can you have such a natural laboratory as you have in our region? Kids will be spending most of their days looking into computer screens. And unless we give them the opportunity to stop looking at the computer screens and go out to have a stretch to our waterfronts and to our natural areas, we will have squandered their opportunities for the future. So I leave you with the thought, don't build it, save it. Thank you.